Welcome to Tea or Sugar, the channel where we know every topic is a choice. Today, we're diving into something pretty wild, career advice that's over 1,400 years old. And you'll see, it's about so much more than just getting a job. It's about building a life with real purpose. I mean, it's the question on everyone's mind, right? In a world where AI and automation seem to be changing everything overnight, how do you actually build a career that's going to last? How do you future-proof yourself? So you're probably thinking the answer is going to come from some Silicon Valley tech CEO or a modern business guru. Nope. Today we're going way back to a leader from the 7th century. And trust me, what he had to say is maybe more relevant now than it's ever been. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll look at this timeless blueprint, starting with how to find your unique edge. Then we'll get into the psychology of independence. After that, we'll talk about why having a real skill is your greatest asset. And finally, we'll explore this idea of business as a calling, as something more. All right, so the guy we're talking about is Umar ibn Al-Khattab. He was one of the most influential leaders in early Islamic history. And here's the key. He was a close companion who learned directly from the Prophet Muhammad. This matters because the Prophet himself was a seasoned businessman long before he was a prophet. So this advice isn't just theory, it's grounded in real-world practical experience. In fact, the Prophet often worked under what's called a mudaraba contract. It's basically a partnership. One person puts up the money, and the other provides the labor and the expertise. He was the guy out there running trade expeditions, making deals in different countries. So yeah, the principles we're about to explore come from a place of deep, hands-on experience. Okay, so how does all this ancient wisdom actually help us build a modern career? Well, the very first principle is all about finding your unique edge. You know, that thing that makes you, your personal advantage.
And the framework here is, well, it's super simple but really profound. Omar's advice was basically this: if you try something 3 times and it just doesn't work, let it go. It's time to pivot. But if you succeed at something, even just once, that's a huge signal. That's a sign pointing right at your talent, and you need to lean into that hard.
There's this great story that just nails this point. A man comes to the Prophet complaining that his business is failing. But the Prophet doesn't give him some generic pep talk. He asks a really smart diagnostic question. Where have you had success before? And the man knew the answer. The lesson here is so powerful. Your past wins aren't just memories, they're data points. They're guiding you toward your natural skills. All right, next up, let's get into the psychology of independence, because this is about so much more than just making money. This is about what's going on in your head. This was a huge deal for Umar. He basically put out a call to action, telling people to lift their heads up, get into business, and stop being dependent on others. For him, trade wasn't just a path to wealth, it was a path to dignity. It was about creating your own value. And that's because the psychological cost of being dependent is it's brutal. When you're always relying on someone else, it just eats away at your self-esteem. You start to feel powerless, your confidence disappears. It really chips away at your sense of who you are. It's a heavy weight to carry. And get this is where ancient wisdom lines up perfectly with modern science. We know now that feeling dependent, feeling low on the socioeconomic ladder, is linked to lower levels of serotonin. You know, that's the brain chemical that's all about confidence and feeling good about yourself. So when Umar was telling people to stand on their own 2 feet, he was basically giving them a prescription to boost their own confidence. Let's move on to the next point. And honestly, this one feels like it could have been written yesterday, especially with all the talk about AI. And it's this. You absolutely have to have a tangible skill. For Umar, a skill was the ultimate measure of a person's potential. He didn't care about status or how well you talked. He cared about what you could do. If he met a young person who had no specific craft or profession, he saw them as fundamentally unprepared for the world. He just wasn't impressed.
And this next story is just a masterclass in how to build something from absolutely nothing. So a man comes to the Prophet begging. But instead of a handout, the Prophet gives him a business plan. Step 1, figure out what you have, no matter how small. Step 2, sell those assets to get some startup cash. Step 3, invest that cash in a tool that can make you money, in this case an axe. And Step 4, go to work. Execute the plan. But wait, here's the most crucial part of the story. After the man bought the axe parts, the Prophet didn't just say, "Good luck." No, he took the parts and put the axe together for him, with his own hands. That's real leadership. It's not just telling people what to do, it's empowering them. It's giving them that tangible help they need to actually get started. And that brings us to our last point, which, honestly, might be the most profound one of all. This is about completely reframing how you see your work. It's about viewing business not just as a job, but as a spiritual practice.
I mean, listen to this. The early companions used to say that the only situation they'd rather die in, more than being a martyr, was being out on their camels, trading. Think about that. That elevates business from just a worldly pursuit to one of the highest possible callings you can have.
And this idea didn't come out of nowhere. It's rooted in Scripture. There's a chapter in the Quran that talks about the highest forms of spiritual acts, like praying late at night. And right there, in the same breath, it mentions traveling through the land seeking God's bounty, which everyone agrees means business and trade.
So it all comes down to this really powerful takeaway. Your business, your work, it isn't separate from your spiritual life. It is your spiritual life in practice. How you sell, how you treat your customers, how you talk about your products. Every single interaction becomes a reflection of your character and a part of your journey.
So as we wrap up this 1,400-year-old business seminar, it really brings us back to that core question we always ask here. It's a choice of perspective. Is your work just a means to an end, the sugar you add to life? Or is it the substance itself, the tea, rich with its own meaning and purpose?
Thanks for joining us here at Tea or Sugar. If you choose to see the world through this lens, go ahead and subscribe for your daily dose of perspective. And share this if you think it might change someone's mind about their own work. The choice, as always, is yours. Tea or sugar.